Welcome to our commission meeting on July 11th, 2024 at 9:41 a.m. We are in person as well as virtually today at the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board, and today's meeting is being recorded. To better manage our meeting, if you wish to provide public comments, please raise your hand to be recognized. Once recognized, state your name. Written comments on today's agenda item should have been received by email or website by close of business yesterday, July 10th. Chat feature has been turned off. If you have technical difficulties, please email us at askus@wsgc.wa.gov. To begin, we'll call the roll. We have Vice Chair Sizemore.
Here.
Commissioner Lawson.
Here.
Commissioner Ibsen.
Here.
All right. Senator Conway. Senator Holy. Representative Klova. I believe she's joining us a bit later, maybe. Representative Robertson. All right. Well, we have a quorum, so we will go ahead and get started with the consent agenda, which is the May 9th commission meeting minutes, new licensees, and class 3 gaming employees, and the house bank card room list. Is there any comment on the agenda or any of those things, commissioners?
To approve the consent agenda as presented by staff.
Is there any public comment? Okay. All right, it's been moved.
I can second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, director's report. Director Griffith.
Morning, commissioners. We just want to take the first few minutes and introduce some staff changes. Happy to report and announce that on June 1st, I appointed Jim Nix as the Assistant Director of the Regulation and the Enforcement Operations Division. Jim, who's joining us virtually today, I'm sure you're seen and aware that he has been with the commission now for about 6.5 years. He has most recently served in the role of interim assistant director, and then for the last 6 years served as the agent in charge of the regulation and enforcement unit. And prior to starting with us, he spent over 30 years with the Spokane Police Department and served in various leadership roles, to include finishing up the last 6 years as the assistant chief. So just really thrilled to have Jim in this role. And Jim, do you want to say anything? Put you on the spot.
I thank you for your trust in having me step into this role, and hopefully I'll stand up to the fine standards that my predecessor, Gary Drumhiller, did. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. And then another staffing update, Deputy Director Gary Drumhiller has decided that he is going to retire. I'm struggling with those words. He's giving me a long time to process this decision. So he anticipates retiring on June 1st. I'm still trying to work on that date, so that's why I use the words anticipate, but I think he has different ideas. But he does want to spend more time with his family and grandchildren and embark on new adventures. So this is going to leave a big gap because Gary has been with the agency for over 33 years. And so he has given us the benefit of time, right? And so knowing that he is going to be leaving in June, we have begun the process. We're going to do a request for proposal for recruitment. We're going to do outside recruitment agency to go through this recruitment process. One, it will help us with the other recruitments that we have ongoing right now and need to get started on, as well as timing. So the sooner we can get going on this and have a good applicant pool, we're excited for that because it will allow us opportunity for Gary to pass along that institutional knowledge of 33 years. Hopefully he can get that done in around 6 months. So that's what we're shooting for. Gary, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, not really. It's been a great time. I've enjoyed my time here. Great agency, and I've been able to do a lot of different things during my career. And so you just know when it's time and you're ready, and it's time and I'm ready. So
Well, don't start packing your bags too soon because he's works here. So we got a lot of stuff for him to do, and so he is overseeing the working with our CIO in terms of overseeing the Polaris project. Thank you, Gary. And so you'll
Thank
see
you.
updates on the Polaris project as well as the Lexipol policy update. In the memo, we're making progress on that. And then just also to make you aware of what happened with the Disordered Gambling Advisory Work Group, we met on June 11th and did a report on the problem gambling signage rule that went into effect on June 17th. We're continuing to work with Evergreen Council on problem gambling to finalize a contract with them to redesign the required signage. It is long overdue for an update, and so we're really looking forward to working with them to give us expertise on how best to design that signage to really provide the information that's necessary. The cost for that signage will be covered by funds provided by the Healthcare Authority through an interagency agreement that we were able to recently enter into with them. So we're very thankful for that. Also, Dolores Kieki, I think a few of you worked with her. I saw some recognition there. So she has joined the staff of Evergreen Council on Problem Gambling, and she is now a part of the work group. So it was great to see her again, and look forward to that working relationship. We also at the work group previewed a mobile app for monitoring gambling and behavioral health. So that it's kind of still in the development stage, and a few states are starting to explore using this app. So we're just in the exploration stage. The work group is. We're also the state program shared that they're starting to see an increase in their funding based on the problem gambling percentage rate that went up 2.2% of gross gambling receipts. That went into effect on July 1st of 24, and it goes to 0.26 in July of 25, and that's applicable to all commercial nonprofit organizations that make more than $50,000 a year. So they expect that increase for the fiscal year 23-25 biennium to be about $2.2 million, and how they're expecting to expend those additional funds. One, they're increasing the treatment reimbursements by anywhere from 25 to 56%. So that's a significant reimbursement increase. They're adding more treatment contracts. They've added 2 already. $250,000 will go towards prevention efforts, and they're adding an FTE, and then 50%, at least 50% of the time of that new FTE will go to focus on prevention efforts. And then lastly, they're seeking to provide additional training to certified career counselors. So that's from the Disordered Gambling Advisory Work Group. And then just a few other staff updates. We've had quite a few conferences that staff have attended recently, but also I think it's important to note that staff is called to be speakers at some of these events and conferences to share information that valuable, knowledge, skills, and abilities that they have had in their time working with the Gambling Commission. So the Gambling Regulators European Forum was in Malta in May, and this was the first time that this group of regulators invited regulators outside of Europe. And so Jennifer Lamont spoke on a panel in which she shared current challenges that regulators are facing. And so that was well received. And then the North American Gaming Regulators Association was held in Charleston, South Carolina a few weeks ago. A number of staff attended, and it's just really a great conference because it is for regulators, not only just in the United States, but also, again, from Canada and abroad. Special Agent Supervisor Bill McGregor and Special Agent Tina Antonsen spoke on a theft case that they worked on, a nonprofit. It was well received, and then Jennifer Lamont. I think we shared this before, but Jennifer Lamont, the agent in charge of licensing, she has served on the board for the last 3 years of NAGRA. First as a board member as the incoming president, then current for 1 year for president, and then this last year's CAS president. She will continue to serve and as help put on the conferences as a conference committee. And so if any commissioners are interested in knowing more about that agenda, I would really encourage you to love to put you in touch with Jennifer. I've gone in years past, and it is well attended by regulators, not just in terms of, line staff, but also in terms of commissioners and boards, et cetera, board members. So that is all I have for you. Kind of a lengthy one, but thank you.
Thank you. And next up, we have a budget update with Lucinda Hampton. Morning.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Kristen Hansen. I am the CFO for the Gambling Commission. And I'm just waiting for my presentation to load. There we go. Thank you. So this presentation will be a budget update as well as our fiscal year 25 supplemental budget request. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, this is our gross gambling receipts reported over time. I did present this same chart at the May Commission meeting. We will have our next set of updated numbers at the August Commission meeting. The quarter two quarterly licensing report is due July 31st. So just a reminder that the quarter one of 2024 is the first significant increase that we've seen in gross gambling receipt reporting in the last 2 years. So that was very good to see, and it was actually what the licensees had indicated to us, is that quarter one is often their historically their strongest quarter in terms of gambling activity. So hopefully in quarter two we see those numbers still hold a sustained increase over past years. So next slide, please. So our revenue summary, this is through May 31st because state accounting is still open for June. So we had originally expected to have $16 million in revenue at the end of May, and we had $15.25 million. So a variance of about $850,000. So as a reminder, that variance is largely due to two factors. When the fee increase was effective last year, I was still really new to the Gambling Commission when we were doing all that work. And when I made our revenue projections, I had made the assumption that the fee increase would be for all licensees when it went into effect. After I did all of our work, I learned that those fee increases are rolled out as licenses renew. So because of that, the fee increase only applied to those that renewed in July 1 of last year and then moving forward. So the increase in our revenue has ramped up over time rather than realizing an increase all at once. And then additionally, when I was working revenue projections for this original report that was a year ago, I used a 3% increase in gross gambling receipts because that's what we had seen historically. And in 2023, we just did not see a 3% increase. It was actually rather flat and matched what the numbers were in 2022. So the combination of those two factors accounts for quite a bit of the variance that we're seeing between the allotted and actual. And that's evidenced by the fact that in February when I reported, our variance was 1.79 million. And then in in May when I reported, which was the close of the Q1, our variance was 1 million, and now we're at 840,000. So as we see more of our licensees paying under the update, the fee increase, we're coming closer to what we expected to see for revenue overall. Next slide, please. So our expenditures through May 31st, when we did our original allotments, we expected that our expenditures would be about 18 million. Our actual expenditures are 14.7 million. A large part of that variance continues to be our staffing vacancies. And then another part of that is also because our IT modernization project has not moved as quickly as we originally anticipated. So both the contracts and the goods and services had expenditures in there for our IT modernization project that we just haven't incurred yet, both buying software and hiring contractors to help implement for that project. The equipment variance that we see is not because we didn't try and buy our equipment, it's because we still continue to see issues with supply chain for our equipment. Example, we ordered some vehicles last October or November, and they were never delivered. We had to cancel that order. We re-procured from someone else and have since received our vehicles, but it's still very challenging to find some of our equipment. And on top of that, it's just more expensive, of course. So next slide, please. So our supplemental budget request is $1.78 million. The amount you see in the first column is the budget as approved by the commissioners last July when I presented the biennial budget. The numbers you're seeing here do not include the IT modernization because we don't need a supplemental request for that because that spending has already been approved and we have money set aside. So this so that I can compare apples to apples and go back a slide. Thank you. I wanted to make sure that what I was displaying for the approved budget and the supplemental budget were on par with what was originally requested. So that's why it doesn't include IT modernization. The personnel supplemental request is two things. One, I learned after last July that the statewide system that I use to calculate what our salaries are going to be does not automatically apply the 3% increase to any of our agent positions, although it does for the rest of our staff. So that request was not included in our budget request last year, even though it's legislatively mandated. So we've included it here. The second part is that we are wanting to double fill some positions for people that have indicated that they would like to retire, and we want to make sure that we have time to have knowledge exchange and make sure that there's business continuity. So that is the personnel line item. In the contracts, there's, as Director Griffin mentioned, we're hiring an outside firm to help recruit for our deputy director. That wasn't in our original request, so that is part of the supplemental request. And then a large part of the supplemental request is also asking for the ability to hire an organizational change management consultant, both to help with our IT modernization and just a lot of the change that we're seeing in the agency overall. Equipment is, we need additional vehicles that we didn't initially identify. And some of our, notably IT equipment, is just more expensive than it was when we originally submitted our budget. And then lastly, the overhead item for $500,000, that represents the other agencies that we have to pay for services. That represents the increase in billing rates that was approved for them in this legislative session for their supplemental budget request. We don't have an option to pay those bills, so we're asking for the authority from you guys to be able to pay those bills when they come. So next slide. So I've been presenting this projected available fund balance, I think, since the January commission meeting. And so this one takes into consideration if the supplemental budget request is approved, And I've also updated how we're forecasting our revenue. Until recently, we haven't had enough data that didn't have pandemic effects on our revenue to be able to use our historic revenue to project our future revenue. So what I've switched to now is using a rolling 12-month average of our revenue. So every month when our revenue comes in, I adjust this to average our most recent 12 months and update our forecast to see where we are. And so because of that switch, because we have enough data to be comfortable with using that methodology, we do see a more favorable revenue outlook in our projected available fund balance. So if the supplemental budget request is approved and we were fully staffed from July 1, 11 days ago, until June 30 of next year, we anticipate that our available fund balance would be $1.45 million. And just a reminder what available fund balance means. It means, so we have a sizable fund balance because right now we have money set aside for our IT modernization project, include not only just our big piece, but we know we have to replace a couple smaller systems when we phase out our legacy systems. Also, we have money set aside for our records management system project that's happening. And then a security update, a building security update for our Lacey office. So we have all that money set aside in our fund as well as OFM's required working capital balance. So after we consider all that, our projected available fund balance would be 1.45 million. Next slide, please. So after we had some listening sessions in winter with both hearing public feedback and listening to our tribal partners, one of the things that was brought up is that even though we need to know what our costs would be at 100% staffing 100% of the time, when people leave, it takes time to fill their position. So what that translates to is approximately an 8 to 10% rolling vacancy rate, just because it takes time to recruit and all that work. So this chart is all the same factors except for applying a 10% vacancy rate. So given consideration to that vacancy rate, we project our available fund balance in June 25 to be $2.58 million. So that is the end of my presentation. If there's any questions?
I have one question.
Yeah.
For the gross gambling receipts from the Q1 of 2024, is that similar to pre-pandemic or is it more or less, do you know? About the same?
I know it's more. And the one thing I can say is it's really challenging to compare because there was a phase-in period. And so 2019 was the first full year that was the 2019 fiscal year. So July 1 was the first time that all the licensees were reporting under that new model. So by the time we didn't even get a full year of data before pandemic.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So I could go back and look at Q1 of 2019 and see how much, what the difference is. But I do know that this is greater than 2019. I just don't know the exact.
Okay, then that's fine. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, is there any public comments? None. All right. And we have,
I move to approve the FY25 supplemental budget request as presented by staff.
Second.
been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you, Cinda. Next, we are moving into executive session. We will start with 1 hour and then simply.
Might we take the fee rule since it kind of flows with the budget first?
Which one?
The
Catherine.
Can we do the or date too? Can we do the or date too?
Yeah, if we could just sneak 2 in here and
Sure.
do the license fee discussion only and the alignment of license fee days.
Let's do
They
3
kind
and 5.
of go with the budget. Thank you. And then that would be helpful. Thank you.
Oh, so we're gonna move to tab 3, fee increase rules with Adam. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, I am Adam Amarin, Legal Manager and Rules Coordinator for the Gambling Commission. So to briefly summarize the fee rule, as Crescinda had mentioned earlier this year, when staff was doing our projections for the future budget, we did not believe that we were collecting enough revenue to cover all costs of regulation, enforcement, licensing, etc. So in January 2024, staff asked the commissioners to initiate initial rulemaking in the event that we would need to adjust fees for the upcoming year, which commissioners did approve that request at the time. Following a budget presentation at the February 2024 commission meeting, commissioners expressed their concerns with reacting too quickly and wanted to see more information as it came in over the course of the first half of the year. At the May 2024 commission meeting, Crescinda made a similar budget presentation with the available data from the first quarter of 2024 and shared updated projections. At that time, commissioners discussed how to proceed with rulemaking to address the proposed rule and decided to table that further discussion until more information was available. Prior to both the May meeting and this meeting in July, staff shared similar budget presentations with both travel partners and the public. We received some great feedback from both travel partners and the public regarding ideas. As Crescinda mentioned, the fact that the first quarter is generally the strongest for our licensees, and we heard and took those into account. Going forward, staff is recommending that commissioners discuss how to proceed and table this rulemaking for further discussion until August, when we have additional information regarding the second quarter of this year.
Want to have any questions or comments?
I guess comment. I mean, I think one thing that we've seen over the last, quarter and a half is a flattening. And I completely understand the concerns of staff at a point in time in December and January of this last year. But I think, by kind of pausing, gathering more data, and seeing that flattening of the ending fund balance, I think it'd be prudent to see next quarter. And then if we, it's not going to be as good as quarter one probably, but if we see that continued flattening of the ending fund balance, then I think maybe we will at that point be able to set aside this course of fee increase consideration. And then, hopefully at that point, maybe there'll be a little more time to be able to begin evaluating individual activities and how they reflect to our overall revenue projections and whether we're at the right level for any particular activity. So I would propose that we just continue this till next month.
All right. Any comments? Okay, then we will move to tab 5, which is aligning the license expiration dates.
Yes, thank you. So currently, organizational licenses expire at the end of the quarter, depending on which quarter their license was initially approved. Staff is proposing that with this rule that we align all organizational license expiration dates to June 30th. And the hope is that this will aid in revenue forecasting, as well as simplify implementation and communication to licensees in the event that fee adjustment is necessary in the future. At the May 2024 meeting, commissioners initiated rulemaking to explore aligning expiration dates for organizational licensees. Today, we have some rule language to propose. You'll see in your packet, we have 2 new rules and 2 amendments to existing rules. The first rule, new rule, will be WAC 230-03-002, titled Expiration Date for Organizational Licensees. This rule is in 2 parts. First, it defines what organization means and what organizations would be subject to this rule. And then the second part of that rule clarifies that, or I guess establishes that the licenses will expire on June 30th of each calendar year. WAC 230-05-128, renewing your license in a timely manner. We're proposing 1 amendment to this rule, and that is for individuals that will not be renewing online and instead receive a waiver to renew through paper. Instead of the current 15 days, we're proposing to give them 30 days. Another change would be to WAC 230-05-136, prorating or refunding fees. The amendments to this rule would be to clean up the language in the first 2 subsections, striking those subsections, and clarifying when we will prorate or refund fees, or rather when we will not. And then the last new rule will be a sunset rule to address licensees who renew in September 2024. This WAC will be 230-05-177, entitled Temporary Reduction of Base License Fees. And this rule is for organizations renewing their license with a license effective date between October 1, 2024 and April 1, 2025. And we are proposing that the base license fee will be prorated as laid out in the schedule there, 25%, 50%, and 75%, depending on when the quarter on which that license was approved. And this rule will sunset on June 30th, 2025. So at this time, staff is recommending filing the new and amended rules for further discussion.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
One, I guess. And I'm not sure if it's you or Adam or not, but if this is adopted for final action in the next few months, all of this will occur on the legacy system. I mean, is it capable, I guess, of kind of this sort of change?
Yes, it will occur on the legacy system, and we've spoken with our IT people, and they're comfortable with the plans, and we believe we could accomplish everything that's set out.
They have 4-leaf clovers, and everybody's crossing their fingers and toes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other commissioners have questions, comments? No? All right. Is there any public comments on this?
Good morning, commissioners, chair. My name is Victor Mena. I'm president of MT&M Gaming, which operates 2 card rooms in the state. I see that the challenge has been being able to forecast revenues and projected expenses going forward for budgeting purposes. One of the things that this commission's always had is this staggered licensing period by quarter. And it has been very effective for operators to be able to identify when their year ends and stops. It hasn't been a negative system for the licensees from that standpoint. You do have some cons that could happen by going to this structure. You're going to take in all your revenue in the first 6 months of every year, and then the last 6 months of every year, you're going to have no inflows from licensees other than employee transfers, new hires, those types of things. So it would change how you guys will be monitoring your cash flow and allocating that cash flow. And your current structure actually has a more even flow of inflows coming in. From an accounting side, it just depends on how you want to manage that money and how you want to look at it. I'm not suggesting that one is better than the other, but I am suggesting that this will change how you accrue and how you look at it. And so I just want to put that on the record for everybody to understand what this will do. Okay. Any questions? No? All right.
Thank you. Any other public comments? And Judy? All right, and do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve draft language for aligning license expiration dates for further discussion as presented by staff.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you. Now I think we'll move into executive session, which will start at an hour, but it could be extended. So just watch the monitors, I suppose. So for now, we'll start at 10:30. We'll take a break, come back at 11:30. All right. Okay, welcome back to the meeting. It is 11:40 a.m. We are reconvening. I will go ahead and call the roll again. Commissioner Lawson,
Here?
Commissioner Ibsen,
Here.
Commissioner Sizemore.
Here.
All right, Senator Conway. Okay. Senator Foley. Representative Kloba. And Representative Robertson. All right, well, we have a quorum, so we will move into tab 4, which is firearms as prize with Adam.
Thank you. For the record, again, I am Adam Amron, the legal manager and rules coordinator for the Gambling Commission. Tab 4, this is our discussion on restrictions on firearms as prizes, WAC 230-06-025. This rule started when Senate House Bill 1240 was passed, prohibiting manufacturing, importing, distributing, or selling assault weapons. At the time, commissioners expressed concern that nonprofit and charitable organizations in Washington were able to award assault weapons as raffle prizes, which may conflict with the newly passed inside law. At the February 2024 meeting, commissioners agreed to initiate rulemaking to change WAC 230-06-026 to ensure the law is in line with the other state statutes and to bring it more in line with how raffles are actually being conducted in Washington state. At the May 2024 meeting, commissioners filed the proposed rule language for further discussion, and that rule language limited the certificate to be redeemable by a licensed firearm dealer to a Washington state dealer. It limited the firearms that are available as prizes to only those firearms that are authorized for sale in Washington state. And it prohibited persons who are not permitted to own firearms in Washington state from winning a firearm in a raffle. Additional language to the rule was needed to ensure such prohibited individuals are not able to acquire firearms as raffle prizes. Today, staff is recommending that commissioners take final action on the amendments to WAC 230-06-025 after holding a public hearing with an effective date of 31 days after filing with the Office of the Code Reviser. And I will also add real quickly that we have not received any public comment in between commission meetings.
Are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
I think the only thing I would correct, so it's substitute House Bill 1240s.
I apologize. Yes, you're correct.
That's what you meant. Okay.
Yes.
there any public comment? Anything? All right, do we have a motion?
I move to take final action on firearms as a prize as presented by staff to be effective 31 days after filing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we are now on tab 6, which is a petition to initiate rulemaking regarding no limit poker.
Yes, this petition came from the public. This would amend WAC 230-15-135. The petitioner is seeking to completely remove the cap on betting in poker and the number of bets per round in poker. Currently, the maximum amount for a single wager in the game of Texas Hold'em poker is $40, although Class F and house bank card game licensees may offer a single wager not to exceed $300. WAC 230-15-135 also allows for no more than 4 wagers in any betting rounds and no more than 5 betting rounds in any one game. This proposal from the petitioner would seek to eliminate each one of those limits. As the petitioner puts it, he is seeking true no limit Texas Hold'em. The proposed rule change is a policy decision. Staff would just like to point out that the commission may wish to consider if the proposal is consistent with the legislative intent expressed in RCW 9.46.010. Under the requirements of the Administrative Procedures Act, the commission must act on a petition within 60 days of receiving it. Your options today are to initiate rulemaking proceedings by filing the rule as proposed for further discussion, or by denying the petition in writing.
Questions? Is there any public comments?
Commissioners, ex officio staff, my name is Victor Mena, President MT&M Gaming. I operate the Last Frontier Poker Room. This petition is interesting from the standpoint of what the petitioner is talking about, seeking to change this is because roughly 85% of all poker games that are played in this country right now are no limit. And so Washington has a cap, which is, have been in place since the entire time we've been operating. But Washington is also surrounded by Oregon, California, Idaho, Canada, which all operate no limit. I'm not speaking in support or opposed to the petitioner. I'm just giving some data points as far as where this is probably stemming from. The $300 cap we have currently is because at the time when we moved wager limits to $300, I want to say 2009, for table games, this rule proposal was changed for their wager limits in poker a few years later. Okay, so it was meant to match the house bank environment. So just to give you a little context of where our limits have been with that. All right.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comments? Right.
Quick question, I guess, of Adam. Did you or any of our staff provide the petitioner with the kind of the legislative declaration for the Gambling Act, like 946-010? Has anybody shared any of that
Not
kind
to
of
my knowledge.
background?
I did not.
Petitioner is on the phone.
Okay.
Attending virtually.
Okay, so did the petitioner want to say anything or have to, but if you're okay.
Can we make sure they're not just having trouble or?
Can they do that backwards to phone and or to audio? Mr. Douglas Matisas?
Mastiff.
Mastis?
Is he from Boston? Mastis?
No.
Okay, sounds.
Douglas Mastis?
Tina, I don't believe he's on the list.
Okay. Thank you.
I thought he sounded earlier.
Not here.
Not-
Any
The
other,
petitioner was made aware of the commission meeting and the fact that this is going before the commission, I believe. Adam, yes, and the date and time links were provided for attendance and opportunity to speak.
any other public comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
I would move to deny the request in writing based on RCW 946-010, the declaration within the Gambling Act, and the first sentence of 946-010 is the public policy of the state of Washington on gambling is to keep the criminal element out of gambling and to promote the social welfare of the people by limiting the nature and scope of gambling activities and by strict regulation and control. And I believe that opening line of the Gambling Act really curtails us from and is contrary to the intent of this petition. So for that reason, I would recommend that we deny this and make sure that the petitioner is aware that it would likely take a legislative change in order to allow a true no limit poker in the state.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, motion passes. Moving to tab 7 is manufacturer and distributor fees.
Yes, so this is another petition from the public. The petitioner in this case is a official distributor of a company called Del Negro Playing Cards. The petitioner submitted a rule petition requesting a change in the rules governing how playing card vendors are treated. The petitioner believes the current rules cause his organization to have significant challenges to be able to offer their products in gambling establishments in the state. He described the process of becoming an approved vendor in Washington state as both arduous and costly. The petitioner believes these requirements and associated costs discourage many businesses from entering the Washington state marketplace. The petitioner did not specify a specific rule change, but urged the commission to consider this issue more broadly. He believes, as I said, the current rules and cost of licensure prohibit new vendors from offering items like playing cards, chips, dice, and altogether make it difficult for new competition in the marketplace. Currently, rules define playing cards as gambling equipment. Gambling equipment distributors and manufacturers must be licensed in Washington state. All licensed organizations must pay annual license fees. The current base license fee for distributors is $770, while the base license fee for manufacturers is $1,650. If adopted, this rule change could require several amendments throughout WAC Title 230, including but not limited to WAC 230-03-200, which defines gambling equipment. The proposed rule change is a policy decision regarding the classification of playing cards and other similar items as gambling equipment, and the process for licensing manufacturers and distributors of those items. Staff's recommendation is, again, under the Administrative Procedures Act, the commission must act on a petition within 60 days of receiving it. The options are to either initiate rulemaking proceedings by filing the rule as proposed for further discussion, or to deny the petition in writing.
I believe the petitioner is here. Dino Rosario. Do you have anything?
Dino, you should be able to unmute yourself.
He has
Okay.
There, okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. I'm not sure what the rules of decorum are for these types of hearings, but I have a prepared statement, and after that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have. So, good afternoon, esteemed members of the Gaming Control Board. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm here to formally request a change in the rules governing how playing card vendors are treated by the commission. Currently, we view the process to become an approved vendor in the state of Washington as we feel it's both arduous and costly. The extensive requirements and high associated costs create significant barriers for new companies looking to enter the market. This situation discourages many businesses from attempting to operate within the state, limiting available options for casino establishments. One of the unintended consequences of the current system is that it effectively protects a monopoly. By making it difficult for new vendors to gain approval, the state inadvertently supports the dominance of existing players, stifling competition and innovation. This lack of competition can lead to higher costs for gaming establishments, and ultimately the potential for creation of a gray market, which is something we're seeing in other jurisdictions. I represent Del Negro Playing Card Company here in the United States. They are a renowned Italian manufacturer with close to 100 years of experience in producing high-quality playing cards. Our longstanding tradition of excellence and innovation has made us a trusted name in the gaming industry worldwide. However, despite our extensive history and proven track record, the current regulatory environment in Washington State poses significant challenges for us to offer our products to gaming establishments in the state. Over the last few years, there has been considerable consolidation of playing card manufacturers in the United States. Many of the vendors initially approved in Washington are no longer making playing cards, leaving only one company currently licensed to sell playing cards in the state. This consolidation further exacerbates the monopoly issue and underscores the need for regulatory reform to promote a more competitive market. In light of these issues, I urge the Commission to consider revising the rules to streamline the approval process for new vendors. By reducing the complexity and cost of becoming an approved vendor, the state can encourage a more competitive market, fostering innovation and providing better options for gaming establishments and consumers alike. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I look forward to a favorable consideration of this request. Should you require any further information or wish to discuss the matter in more detail, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions?
Yeah, if I may. Thank you, sir, for your statement. I guess I'm trying to really understand the problem here, and just for a little background and I may be coming at this the wrong way, but half a dozen years ago or so, the commission looked at completely revamping our licensure and fee process, and instituted that back in, I think, 2018, 2019. We had members of various gambling activities, commission staff, myself, and I think one other commissioner that participated in several meetings over the course of probably 6 months and tried to look at various activities and kind of how the distribution of expenses were distributed by activity. One of the things that is unique to Washington versus many other states is we have no general fund support. We're 100% funded through licenses and the co-regulation of tribal gaming. So therefore, we need to not only do the licensing and regulation aspects through those resources, but also criminal enforcement. So that means if you're going to participate in the gambling industry in the state of Washington, you have to, pay whatever kind of commiserate amount is that it is. And we deemed it, at that time, it seemed to make sense for there being a percentage applied across a particular activity, whether it's be manufacturing, house bank card rooms, punch board pull tabs. Each one of those activities have an assigned kind of rate for their gambling activity. And within that, there are kind of a max amount that could be paid if you're within that activity, as well as an initial, the initial base fee. We wanted to make sure, and I mean, if we need to readdress it, I think we certainly could. But it seemed to be prudent at the time, certainly, to make sure that a base fee was both enough of an investment so that people weren't just throwing in applications and tying up an entire, a whole bunch of the staff time in endeavors that were never going to go anywhere, but also be, at a level that entrepreneurs could say, hey, I think I have a good idea that I'd like to break into the Washington market. So trying to find, that fine line or that kind of sweet spot for that. We did our best, certainly back when we kind of created this system. So I don't see it as arduous. I'm not, I guess, in position to argue with you. But it feels to me like, very broad public participation in trying to create those base fees and then rates that we established for the various activities. So I don't know if you're asking it. Oh, well, and I have one more point, I guess, is I have been advocating for quite some time that the design of the system allows us to be able to look at particular activities in kind of a silo. We can determine, based on how much of a percentage of the overall gambling in the state, is this activity doing their fair share? Are they overpaying? Are they underpaying? Kind of for the overall operation of the Gambling Commission and the agency. So I like where your head is on like, maybe looking at all of these sorts of things. I don't know exactly, how whether you're heading the direction I guess I see it. So there's probably a question in there, but thoughts?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the comments, and let me give you a little background as to where I'm coming from. So I'm also a part owner in Shark Trap Gaming and Security Systems. You guys recently just approved us about a month and a half ago. We develop shufflers, right, for the casino environment to shuffle the playing cards. And really what I'm referring to as far as the fees is the amount of money it cost us to send your agents down to our factory in Las Vegas, right? I think they came for about 3 days, and that was all on our cost, right? So I'm taking that and now extrapolating that cost out to say, as an example, if you needed to go and see the factory in Italy, it cost us tens of thousands of dollars at Shark Trap because we're in Las Vegas. To send your agents to Italy, right? We're talking about maybe $100,000, right? Just extrapolating that out. And that's really what I'm referring to as far as the fees. I think the licensing fee at face value is just fine. I think it's the background information that's required, and we're not opposed to it. But what it comes down to is, specifically in the state of Washington, we'll never sell enough playing cards to recover that fee to become licensed, and that's really what I'm more speaking to. So I don't know if there's and again, it's not clear in the rules, at least from what I've seen, that maybe there's a different way to skin the cat, so to speak. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. But that's really where I'm coming from with this petition, and it's really from experience with my other company getting approved in the state. And like I said, that's all costs that we bear up front before we even put a single product inside the state of Washington, and that can become cumbersome.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and so I think that kind of, if you were on for the prior rule petition, I mean, our legislative declaration requires us to provide strict regulation and control. I've been on this commission for, a decade now, and I've not heard anybody from our staff suggest that we could accomplish our legislative requirements by not doing the due diligence that they've done for the past 50 years. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how we would be able to accomplish, our legislative charge without, continuing to do the due diligence that they do. So yeah, I'm not sure if staff has any further comments based on kind of, now that we've narrowed down what it is.
Certainly we could, I think it still becomes a policy issue to some extent. At what point are you willing to absorb that risk that if we don't go on site to verify manufacturing processes, security of gambling equipment, the production, to make sure that it's not easily able to defraud players, et cetera. I mean, those would be things that I would be looking to you all from, because I'm not hearing a problem other than the cost, which unfortunately I get is hard. And while it's not specifically outlined in rule, it is actually in chapter 230.05, but 946.070 subsection 5 says that we can assess the additional costs that we incur in the pre-licensing investigation. So, I think that's where I'm at with this topic. There is, I get that operating in Washington, if you're not quite sure what the economic viability for the costs that would be incurred for a manufacturer's license, we do have one tool that is a manufacturer special sales permit, which is a one-time permit. It is not a license. You can't have ongoing relationship activity with vendors, or excuse me, with licensees, and you can sell directly. Manufacturers can sell directly to licensed entities after they receive the permit, but it allows for gambling equipment to be sold in the state, as long as it's less than 25,000 during the permit year. And there's a few other things there. So that is only $275. It's a one-time thing, and the application submittal process is very limited, but that is the only other option to see, gives you an opportunity to see if you're what you're going to offer to licensees, the gambling equipment that you would make available to licensees would be economically viable to go forward in a long-term manufacturer license.
Right. Thank you. For that, we're going to go ahead and move into other public comments.
Hello, Commissioners. Again, Victor Mena. I completely understand where the petitioner is coming from. I've been purchasing cards in the state of Washington since 2001. We have a very limited selection of vendors. As a matter of fact, we are down to one. This actually did come up a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, that there was a change in ownership in the current vendor who is licensed. And the change in ownership was a substantial owner adjustment to their license. And it was found that it was possible that someone might not have been cleared or able to clear a criminal background check. And if that person was a part of that company, then that would jeopardize the license of that manufacturer. And that could put us all in jeopardy as far as being able to acquire probably a significant piece of equipment. We can't do card games in the state if this manufacturer is deemed unlicensable based on a corporate change that could occur. And this company is large enough that something of that nature could happen. So I completely understand the position of the commission and the staff of wanting to ensure that the product is right, okay? But I have been also down to G2E to see several other card manufacturers. And when I speak to them about this issue, one of the things they come back to me with is, well, we can't get licensed there because our cards are manufactured in China and they've got to send 2 agents down, and now they've got to pay for all this overhead that they don't see the return on the investment. So they stay out. But that's kept the barrier to a product that we're kind of beholden to as far as even monopolistically speaking. So it is a challenge. I think it is an interesting discussion for you guys to take up and see what solutions could be had. Thank you.
Thank you. There is another hand raised.
Yeah, if I may, just as a springboard on that comment, sounds like the gentleman is an operator there in the state. I don't know for sure, but it sounds like he is. And you know, we deal in other states, as an example. In Nevada, we're licensed. We're licensed in California, Arizona. We've just filled out the paperwork to become licensed there. And really, what they look at in those states, and I understand they're different states in Washington, but they view this type of equipment that we're talking about as associated equipment, not gambling equipment. Because in reality, these are perishable items, right? So, you know, depending on the operator, they may change their cards out every 2 hours, and they cancel them out, and whatever the process is there in the state to do that. So these are perishable items, and I understand where the commission's coming from to ensure that, you know, everything's being done correctly out of the factory and that they're not pre-marked and things like that. But what we are seeing in Nevada, as an example, is we are starting to see a gray market form. And in fact, the very large operator in Nevada that has purchased cards, like the gentleman has said, unbeknownst to the operator, from a manufacturer in China. The representative there in Nevada represented themselves as the manufacturer. They are in fact not the manufacturer. And it's very difficult for the operators to know whether or not they're the manufacturer. So we're in front of Nevada right now explaining to them that there's a big difference between a distributor and in fact a manufacturer. And to the gentleman's point, outside of USPC and our company, the majority of the playing cards in the United States come out of China. And in fact, in some of these cases, specifically the one here in Nevada that I'm referring to, I myself can call up that company, send a logo from, let's just say, Emerald Queen in Washington, and say, I need you to make me 1,500 decks pre-marked, and as long as I have money to pay for it, they will send those to me. Del Negro, USPC, as an example, you have to be associated with the casino. You know, there's a vetting process from our standpoint on the customer side in order for us to even fulfill any of those orders. The Chinese manufacturers that the gentleman referred to, they don't have those standards, let's call them. So again, I think it's to the point where what you will see, right, is you'll see that USPC will continue to raise their price, and it makes it difficult for the small card rooms really in Washington. I think, you know, the big tribes are always going to get their cards, but it will make it more difficult for the small card rooms to be able to get their cards. And to the extent that they can get their cards, it's going to cost them, you know, a considerable amount of money compared to what it's cost them for the last, say, 3 years. So.
Thank you for that. Any additional comment from anybody? Okay. We will go ahead and close the public comment period and see if there's a motion. Next month.
I can't be the only commissioner with a voice.
I guess I'll say in that I would like to see a more detailed petition by the petitioner, because the one that was submitted is vague. And we did get more information here today, but I would like to see one that is more detailed as to the significant challenges that are listed in there. The part of the process that you believe is arduous. We already talked about costly, but I'd like to hear from you as to why you believe it's arduous, and then actually look to the exact rule and cite to the exact rule that you would like to see change. So I would like a more detailed petition, because I just feel as though this is too vague to be considered right now.
You have a motion?
I move to deny the request because the petition is too vague and not sufficiently detailed. Yeah, I move to deny because the petition is not sufficiently detailed, but I encourage the petitioner to resubmit with more information. A motion that I can make? No, I did, yeah.
So can I throw an alternative?
Friendly amendment, sir? Yes.
Well, I think, I mean, I concur. I think that, well, there's two things. I think, I mean, certainly if we initiate rulemaking, then it becomes our rulemaking process. We then control, I mean, it would be much better if we had, you know, a better clarity, a recommendation for what rules should be changed and what the language should be. Because one of the things, you know, just kind of Victor's comments made me say, okay, well, I mean, do we need to create a pool if house bank card rooms want to, you know, defray some of the costs for some equipment that they want down the road? I mean, is there a way to do that? Or so there's, I mean, and that's just like off the top of my head. I'm sure there's probably some other things. And I'm wondering whether the petitioner would want to withdraw the petition rather than have it being denied, do a little more work and bring forth a new petition that's more complete and more, and hopefully we just through the discussion have provided some avenues to consider by the petitioner and then bring it forward, you know, here in a month or two.
Right. Yes, I withdraw my motion.
All right, so petitioner, you do have the option to withdraw your petition if you'd like, and work with putting it based on our feedback, submitting a new one.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and do that. Like, to her point before, yeah, it's vague, obviously, right? Because there's no specific area that we saw that would kind of speak to, some of our concerns as far as the background and the cost of the background, right? And defraying some of those costs. So I'd be happy to withdraw the petition and come back using some of the comments that you guys gave us today. To resubmit here in a couple months. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. To initiate rulemaking has been withdrawn by the petitioner. So we will now move on to let's do tab 10, the minimum cash on hand for discussion only.
Only roll.
Yes, so at the November 2023 meeting, commissioners asked staff to work with stakeholders to determine if rulemaking could address stakeholder concerns regarding minimum cash on hand requirements for house bank card rooms. Currently, our rules require house bank card game licensees to have sufficient cash on hand to redeem all chips issued for play and pay out all prizes. To ensure that house bank card game licensees have sufficient cash on hand to redeem all chips for play and pay out all prizes, we require by rule house bank card rooms to have a minimum amount of cash on hand based on the formula that's included in your rule summary. In March 2024, commissioners initiated rulemaking on this topic, and at our last meeting in May 2024, they discussed the proposed rule language and approved it for filing. Following the May 2024 commission meeting, staff filed the CR 102 with the proposed rules, and I'll quickly summarize that. The new proposed rules require card game licensees to exchange chips for cash unless the player requests payment by check. It also changes the formula for determining the minimum amount of cash on hand to be acquired in the cage. And it allows specific prizes to be paid by check as well. Included in the CR 102 that we filed after the previous meeting was a small business economic impact statement analysis, which concluded that the rule does not impose more than minor costs on small businesses. As we just discussed, this rule mainly changes the formula for determining how much cash a card room must have on hand and allows licensees to write checks to patrons instead of paying prices in cash. So the associated costs with this rule change would mostly be limited to the cost around writing checks, which we do not expect those costs to exceed 0.3% of the business's annual revenue or income. We have had some stakeholder feedback on this during our public feedback sessions. Most of the feedback we've received has been generally positive and in favor of this rule change. One stakeholder mentioned that safety issues were a big concern for him with regards to both the winning patron and the staff on hand in the card room. So this month, this rule is up for discussion only, and assuming no problems, we'll propose it for final action next month.
Questions or comments by commissioners? No? All right, thank you, Adam. I think then we'll go ahead to the default and then we'll come back and do the two presentations. That's the default of Jeffrey.
Absolutely. Thank you. So this default is for Mr. Jeffrey T. Brown. In September 2023, a WSGC agent received notification from the Snoqualmie Gaming Commission, or STGA, that Mr. Brown's travel gaming license had been revoked by STGA. We requested the investigation documents from STGA, which showed an issue with unemployment insurance unemployment insurance filed by Mr. Brown. Although Mr. Brown was employed by Snoqualmie Casino from October 2019 to January 2023, the investigation showed that Mr. Brown filed claims with ESD misreporting the hours he worked between September 2022 and January 2023. The investigation indicated that Mr. Brown submitted unemployment claims to ESD stating that he had only worked 58 hours, whereas records kept by STGA found that he found that he had worked 513 and a half hours during the period in question. STGA's investigation ended up concluded that his license should be revoked. His tribal license should be revoked by STGA. And once that process was made official, they notified our office. I reached out to Mr. Brown after, excuse me, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Director Tina Griffin issued Mr. Brown a notice of administrative charges on May 14th, 2024. They were mailed to Mr. Brown's last known address on file. On May 31st, 2024, Mr. Brown called me to discuss the case. Mr. Brown indicated that he does not wish to contest the charges and is willing to accept the outcome of revocation. However, he did wish to communicate his remorse for the situation and asked that the record reflect that he is making all efforts to repay the ill-gotten funds to ESD. You may take final action against Mr. Brown's gaming license. Mr. Brown fraudulently obtained $10,826.10 in unemployment benefits due to misreporting his working hours. Based on this incident, Mr. Brown poses a threat to the effective regulation of gambling as demonstrated through his prior activities. The commission is authorized to revoke Mr. Brown's public card room employee license pursuant to RCW 9.46.075, subsections 1, 8, and 9, RCW 9.46.153, subsection 1, and WAC 230-03-085, subsection 1 and subsection 9A. Staff recommends the commission sign the proposed final order and revoke Mr. Brown's public card room license, number 68-31006.
Thank you. Is Mr. Brown here? Oh. 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 Any of the commissioners have any questions?
Motion, if that's in order.
Yes.
I move to revoke Jeffrey T. Brown's public card room employee license number 68-31006 as presented by staff.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, Adam. And then I guess Director Griffin, would you rather do the agency request legislation now or move to the presentation? Go ahead and do the agency request legislation and then.
Good afternoon, commissioners. So at the May meeting, we talked about possible topics for agency request legislation for the 2025 legislative session. At the June meeting, excuse me, in June 3rd, we held a tribal partner as well as a public meeting to hear any thoughts and ideas regarding the ideas that were shared and discussed at the May meeting. A few other ideas were brought from the public meeting as well as from tribal partners, and some of those ideas included funding WSGC to address illegal gambling activities, equalization of gambling tax rates, equity and license fees, and then authorization of online raffles. Staff is still taking into consideration the information that was shared at the May meeting. Staff is presenting to you a few ideas, some of which even though it's in the memo, some of those we are going to try to address by rule. So we think that we can address the credit card or debit cards for collecting fees and recouping those, or excuse me, not recouping, but having the payer pay those processing costs. I think with a little bit more research and possibly a feasibility study from OFM, as outlined by OFM, I think we can go ahead and take care of that without legislative action. In terms of the WSGC collecting unpaid license fees, after a license expires, we did a little bit more digging into some data that we could, and the pandemic caused a bit of problems in terms of staff availability, and really we didn't want to continue to be very heavy-handed with licensees during the pandemic in terms of payment of fees. And then, of course, we had some staffing challenges too. So we are just getting back up and operating in terms of our restructuring or rebuilding of our business office, as well as rebuilding our our legal unit. And so we have now just really started working with licensees to monitor and make sure that after the end of the quarter, if they have not paid, that we are proceeding forward with actively either trying to get them on a payment plan, get them to pay, or unfortunately seeking suspension of their license if they fail to pay and they're still licensed. So in looking back at the numbers in 22, and I really would like to just kind of set those aside because I think those are still some anomalies with the pandemic and the fact that we didn't have fully functional units to proceed forward with those licensees. But in looking at 23, I think we are potentially, if I just kind of take an average of the quarters that licensees who didn't submit license fee reports and pay license fees to us, quarterly license fees to us, and I just kind of extrapolate from an average quarter of license fees that they didn't pay and what they should have, I think we're looking at about $20,000. And so, and it's really, I think, I think there's about 5 or 6. So that would be for 1 year. And really those are coming from the first and second quarter of 23. And we are moving forward now with those reinstituting our processes for administrative action and really working with those licensees. So it's something that we can continue to move forward with if you'd like, or we can continue to monitor this and see what kind of action we are able to pursue from licensees who, with these administrative actions, with the more outreach, et cetera, and staying on top of those people who are not submitting on a timely basis. It's still not going to get us potentially those people who, for whatever reason, lapse and then just don't file their quarterly license report or pay their last quarterly license fee. I think for the most part, we probably have some clues about who those potentially may be if they're already, and looking back, it's usually those people who have already had 1 or 2 lapsed payments, right? Or there are already some other indications. Maybe they're already in the process of selling their entity, or they already have some other sort of administrative situation that we are in close contact with them on. So, so there's that. And then lastly, additional exemptions under the Public Records Act, RCW 4256, just potential throughout some comments here, but really seeking to exempt proprietary information from licensees, applicants, and those people who are required to submit to us as a regulatory agency to outline those sorts of records that we would be required to receive and or review, and any information coming from those records that we would specifically outline or at least try to describe and more clearly in the draft legislation, but with the intent to, 1, protect the public, make sure gambling is legal and honest, 2, protect the assets of the licensee, and 3, protect the staff of those licensees in terms of the information that we are required to receive and review and notate in our reviews as a regulatory agency. So those are some of the topics, and today really just looking for you to kind of give us guidance as to identify the topics that you would like us to work on. I think we have 62 days before everything's due September 13th. So we will need you to vote on the package on September 12th or the morning of the 13th so we can finalize it if there's any changes.
So Yeah, I think, I mean, it makes sense maybe to continue down the path of trying to evaluate the lapses and payments and stuff, maybe another year before we go to the legislature. And, you know, that'll give us a little more time to really dig in and see the magnitude of the number of folks this applies to, as well as the lost revenue, you know, projections down the road. And then, so yeah, so I think if we can continue just utilizing the tools that we have, try to just stay on top of that and have a better understanding of that area. For me, that's fine. I did have one question about the public records piece. Is there a way to, you know, kind of describe what it is that we are seeking an exemption and clarify that, you know, the deliberative process, we're not trying to, you know, eliminate or gain an exemption over any part of the deliberative process, but simply, you know, the staff having access to, whether it's proprietary or however, to really to be able to protect that, whether it's intellectual property or other, that just by virtue of us having it in our hands, then makes it a you know, discoverable essentially, and could be requested. So yeah, I mean, does it seem like we can thread that needle?
We're working on it. Yeah. I think there's other
I was gonna say, are there other I would assume there's.
Yes. So keep in mind that under the Public Records Act, it's a broad mandate. All right, any public records, those i.e. used or maintained by an agency, are considered public records, and therefore there needs to be a exemption that applies to them before the agency is on sort of legally defensible ground in order to deny or otherwise redact or withhold a record. What is being worked on right now is sort of very specific language that makes it clear sort of the specific security and other sort of proprietary concerns of the records. And keep in mind too that some of these records may fall into other exemptions, but we're looking for more clarity at this point so that the exemption is not you're on very legally defensible grounds when it is asserted. So all of these are things that are being kept and taken into account as we're working to draft language.
Yeah, I just wanted to be abundantly clear that we're not trying to provide exemption for anything that is part of our deliberative process, just so.
Yes, and public records are obviously something that is very highly prized by the citizens of Washington State. So again, part of this process is to, again, narrowly define the records in a way that makes it clear the reasons that the commission would be bringing forth this particular legislation. It may still be contested, but that I think is the part of the draft goal.
Yeah, because when we say protect the public by ensuring gambling is legal in us, it's, you know, obviously we have very proprietary information regarding gambling equipment and the securities around those sorts of things. And so, you know, that information in and of itself getting out there, any information we have around protection of assets, as well as protection of the employees or the safeguarding of their staff, really staying within those parameters of the reasons for our requests.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have anything? Director Griffin?
Okay, so at this point, I think we'll just continue to move forward with the Public Records Act exemption. We'll be monitoring and collecting information, maybe in a future meeting, then budgetarily, maybe we can work it into that in terms of stats in the next year or something like that. Okay, we'll bring step back. We'll report back in August how we're doing and moving forward with this. And then action in September if you continue to move forward with it. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Can I add one more on kind of this topic?
Nah,
No?
go ahead.
So looking at some of the other topics that the public and or, tribal meetings kind of brought up, I guess I wanted to confirm that we still have kind of the same policy as a commission regarding, what, doesn't have to be an expansion of gambling, but if somebody is from the industry trying to I'll just use authorization of online raffles. I don't anticipate that the Gambling Commission would ever have or ever come to a position of support for that unless it was, I'll end it there. But I believe that we could become neutral on something like this if in fact it provided the agency with the tools to properly regulate and control the activity. So I know we've had that, some of us that have been around for a few years, we've had that conversation before that, perhaps if a proponent of one of these changes comes to us, we maybe could get to neutral, but it's only if our staff is like, yep, if you do this activity in this fashion, provide this information, we could properly regulate it, and then allow the legislature to do their responsibilities of evaluating the policy of whether they want to change state law policy wise on those sort of things. So I just want to find out if have we changed our perspective on that at all as a commission, or are we going to stick with that kind of going forward this next year?
Senator Conway?
Muted. Senator, you're muted.
The only comment I have is there's a state ban on internet gaming. And, if you're looking at some different type of gambling that outside internet, I would assume that you could look at it, but internet gaming is there's a pretty clear ban on internet gaming in state law. So any effort to move raffles into the internet to sell them encounters that ban. And I just hope that we remember that. Okay. Maybe I'm not suggesting, it's just the internet gaming situation is pretty clear in the state of Washington.
Thank you.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. I think we will move to tab 8, which is self-exclusion annual report by acting agent in charge Tony Hughes.
Good afternoon, commissioners, ex officios, and staff. I assume you can get a thumbs up that everything's good before I start.
Yes.
Okay. I'm talking into a screen, so the acknowledgement helps. Again, my name's Tony Hughes. I'm the interim agent in charge of the Regulation Enforcement Unit. The reason why I'm here today is give you the annual report on self-exclusion program. With that, I will get started. Next slide, please. Just as a refresher, the state self-exclusion program began on May 1st, 2022. So we're just over 2 years into the program. Since that time, we've had over 900 people enroll into the program. And just for your awareness, our staff does annual compliance inspections at all the house bank card rooms just to make sure everything's progressing as needed. Next slide. And some of the timetables I'll be using, obviously this is an annual report. We started on May 1st, 2022. So some of the numbers we're using is from May 1st, 2023 through April 30th, 2024. So the numbers you see on the screen are as effective as of May 1st, 2024. On May 1st, 2024, we had 926 participants in the self-exclusion program, which is a 91% increase from May 1st, 2023, where we had 484. And then the number of participants in each time period, as a quick refresher, when a person enrolls into the self-exclusion program, they have 4 options. They can select a 1, 3, 5, or 10-year period. So out of that 926, 302 selected a 1-year term, 145 selected a 3-year term, 103 selected a 5-year, and 376 selected the 10-year term. As of May 1st, 2024, we had 157 people on the list that was eligible to come off the list because their term expired. So obviously that was 2 years into the program. Those are persons that selected a 1-year term. Out of the 157, 85 have chose to remove themselves from the list, and 72 chose to remain on the list. As also we do track how many incidents we have over that 12-month period to just how many incidents we've had people identified, how many people on the self-exclusion list have been identified at house bank card rooms. During that 12-month period, we had 133 incidents where people on the list were identified at card rooms. That's 35 more than last year at this time, or on May 1st. Examples of how excluded persons were identified. They were identified at the door by security officers that use a scanning device, or they were recognized in the bar or restaurant by staff or gambling at tables. For that same time period, out of those number of incidents, funds were confiscated 56 times. That's 16 more incidents than last year. When those funds are confiscated, they are forwarded to the healthcare authority. And for that time period, May 1st, 23 through April 30th, 24, $31,402 were forwarded to the healthcare authority, which is a slight decrease from last year or the year previous, which was $38,840.50. Because I mentioned at the beginning, we do ongoing compliance inspections at the card rooms, and one of the inspections we do is on self-exclusion. For 2024, we do that. We've already done it for 2024 earlier in the year to prepare for the annual report. On those inspections, we verify compliance with training, enrolling persons, monitoring, preventing participants, and confidentiality. Agents out in the field work with the card rooms to gain compliance, and just some of the things that were noted during compliance inspections, just things that we had to work with licensees with. Annual retraining did not occur as required, and the initial training for new staff did not occur within 3 days, which are requirements in the WAC. And then the list, an updated self-exclusion list was provided to the necessary staff within 48 hours. So that's just some examples, some of what agents noted during their inspections and worked with licensees to gain compliance. The self-exclusion measurables. We do track how many enrollment forms that come in that are either denied or incomplete. During that time period of that 12-month period, we had 22 that came in that were not complete. And then we work with the person or the card room that submitted the form to make that complete, and we got that down to 8. Some examples of why that form is denied or incomplete. It wasn't notarized when it was submitted. the participant failed to complete the form fully or did not sign the form, or the house bank card room didn't complete their portion completely. We do have an administrator for the self-exclusion program. She works directly with the person and or the card room to make that form complete. So we do work to, if we do receive a form that's denied or incomplete, we do our best to get that completed. And just to recognize Rochelle, she's our self-exclusion administrator. She does a great job doing that. So thanks to Rochelle on that. For that same 12-month period, how many participants attempted to remove themselves from the program? We had 19, and these are persons that are on the list that are not eligible to come off the list just because of the timing of the time period they selected. So we had 19 during that time period. The reasons why they wanted to remove themselves from the list, when they enrolled, they believed that exclusion only applied to the one specific card room. They didn't realize that it was statewide. They were intoxicated. There was a language barrier, or simply they just didn't want to be on the list anymore. And how participants enroll into the program, just as a quick refresher as well. There is 4 ways to enroll into the program. You can enroll at, a person could enroll at any house bank card room across the state. They can mail in the enrollment form with it being notarized. They can also mail in the same form with it, with the signature of a prom gambling counselor. And then lastly, they could also come in person to the Lacey office. And this is just a breakdown of how people enrolled. 81% enrolled at house bank card rooms, 81% or 754 people, 12% or 108 mailed in their enrollment form with a notary, 6% or 56 came to the office, and 1% or 8 submitted their form with a signature of a prom gambling counselor. And that is annual report for self-exclusion, and open for questions.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Commissioner Sizemore?
Hi, Tony. Any recommendations from staff on any changes to our program?
Through staff, no, we constantly, we get feedback, of course, and we look at it. We have a group that meets monthly to discuss things as they arise. But nothing on the horizon at this point. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, next we will move into a presentation on strategic intelligence analysis by Special Agent Supervisor of the Intelligence Unit, Bryce Mack, and Brennan Carrington.
Hello, can you hear and see me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I will share my screen. That way I can get this presentation going. Can everybody see the screen okay as well?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Bryce is going to get us started, so.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Good afternoon, commissioners, ex officios, and staff. I'm Bryce Mack. I'm Special Agent Supervisor in our Intelligence Unit. I'm joined today by our Intelligence Special Agent, Brennan Carrington. A little bit about us. I've been with the agency for a little over 20 years. I've worked in a couple different units to include our Criminal Enforcement Unit, our Regulation Unit, and now in our Intelligence Unit. Brennan, he's been with the agency for about 3 years now. He possesses a wealth of knowledge, skills, and abilities in intelligence and analytics. In total, there's 4 of us in the Intel Unit. Our area of responsibility is to collect, analyze, and disseminate intelligence information related to gambling crimes and other gambling intelligence. We have developed many partnerships within our state and throughout the country, whereby we share lots of information. We also provide lots of support to our special agents in assisting them with their cases. So today, what we're going to do is share some of the statistics and other information from our 2023 Strategic Intelligence Brief with you. So with that, I'll let Brennan go ahead and take it away.
Cool. Thank you, Bryce. So to start off, we're going to start with agency-wide statistics and start with the big macro picture, then work our way down to more specific information as we go through the presentation. So with this first slide, this represents the total number of cases that were opened per year in the Gambling Commission for a 5-year stretch. So from 2019 to 2023, the Gambling Commission averaged 1,820 cases per year in that time frame. At the top of each column, you'll see a box that represents the total number of cases for the year in that column. And then as you work your way down the slide, you'll see different colors that represent the various units within the Gambling Commission that would be opening up a case. So in the dark navy blue, we see the regulation unit. In the orange, it's the tribal gaming unit. The green represents the criminal enforcement unit. The lighter blue represents the licensing unit, and the purple represents the electronic gaming lab. An interesting trend specifically with this bit of information is that we were able to capture the year prior to the COVID pandemic in 2019 and what those numbers look like. And as you can see, we took a pretty big hit because of the pandemic in 2020 and then the years following. And we're on an upward trend in most of the units to the pre-pandemic numbers that we had in 2019, but we're not necessarily there. And we're projecting we might hopefully reach those numbers maybe in a couple of years or so. The next slide gives us a little bit more specific information, but within the same time frame from the previous slide. So in the top chart, you'll see the criminal cases opened in the same 5-year time frame, and the chart below is the administrative and civil cases that were opened in that same time frame. For our criminal cases, the agency averaged 336 per year in that 5-year stretch, and for the administrative and civil cases, the agency averaged 1,484 cases per year. For those that don't know, the difference between what would constitute a criminal or an administrative and a civil case is the severity of the crime being investigated. So for criminal cases, that holds a more severe penalty than it would for an administrative or a civil case. And that is usually dictated by an individual that has broken what's called an RCW, or the Revised Code of Washington statute. And for administrative cases, that is when an individual has broken a WAC, or a Washington Administrative Code statute, that has a lighter penalty than it would for criminal cases. And usually we see civil cases pop up for seizures of equipment and stuff like that at the agency. Oh, I'm sorry, was there a question?
I don't think so.
Okay, perfect. And then the trends that we see for both of these charts, the criminal cases are kind of all over the place, so they're not as steady as the overall cases or the administrative and civil cases, which presents more of the same trajectory as the previous slide with the overall number of cases. And then getting a little bit more micro here, we have 2 different charts. So the top chart will indicate the incident types between 2022 and 2023. And this is important because when a case agent goes into our case management system and opens up a new case, they will have to indicate how that case was created. And so this information, where they have to specify whether the case came from a complaint, was agency initiated, or was in scheduled or unscheduled inspection or review, that helps to give us information to show us whether we're being more proactive or reactive with how our cases are being created at the agency. And as you can see with the numbers on this chart, 2022 and 2023 were fairly similar between all 3 of the different categories that we have. And 2023 specifically had a big increase in agency initiated cases, so we were a lot more proactive with our cases last year compared to the previous year. And in the chart below that, that indicates the licensed and unlicensed case count that we have. So as you can see, most of our units, mainly the regulation unit, tribal gaming unit, and licensing units, all do the majority of their work at licensed locations. It's really only the criminal enforcement unit that does most of their work at unlicensed locations because of the non-traditional gambling crimes that they investigate.
Okay, so what we wanted to share with you here are agency-wide enforcement dispositions. So you can see the first line item there. We had 150 notice of infractions. So these are administrative code violations that agents come across, and then they'll give a written notice to a licensed entity or person. The next line, we had 54 notice of violation and settlements. These are also administrative violations that the agency chooses to settle with the licensee for a monetary penalty. We had 29 statement of charges. Again, administrative violations. These weren't formal charges that our legal department draws up and issues to licensed entities. We had 22 criminal charges. These are obviously criminal cases. These are filed with county and city prosecutors. And lastly, we had 9 warning letters. These are formal written warnings to licensed entities and individuals for administrative code violations.
The next slide, we wanted to present the number of cases by county here in the state of Washington. So with this being the second year that we've done a strategic analysis like this, we didn't really see much of a difference between 2022 and 2023 as far as case numbers per county goes. So we have it here presented to you in descending order with the biggest county, King County, dwarfing kind of all the other counties, usually by a factor of 2 or 3, depending on which one you're looking at. So the top county we have is King with 474 cases last year in 2023. The second is Snohomish County with 289 cases. Third was Pierce County with 171 cases. Fourth was Spokane County with 104. And rounding out the top 5 was Thurston County with 93 cases. This next slide is representative of the exact same information from the previous slide, just in a different format and what's called a heat map. And this helps to give a better idea of what the layout looks like for the different case numbers that we had per county. So as you'll see, the counties are identified by their name, and then the number below them is exactly the same from the previous slide, indicating how many cases were in each of those counties. So the lighter colors indicate lesser numbers, and the darker colors indicate higher numbers. The big trend that we found when we were able to make this, get this data compiled, was from Whatcom County all the way down to around Thurston County, the I-5 corridor was very heavy. And again, with King County having a lot more cases than every single other county in the state, that was really the epicenter for what we were seeing with not just overall cases, but a lot of the trends that we started seeing when we delved more into the specifics. Now we're going to get into more crime-specific statistics and get more individual with our information.
So this slide focuses specifically on theft cases our special agents work. In total, we had 75. You can see the breakdown there. 56 of the cases, they involve things like theft of cash, theft of pull tabs, and other items. We had 19 cases involving theft specifically of casino chips. And to the right there, you can see we wanted to highlight one of our cases that was worked by our regulatory unit. This case, it just started out with a routine inspection at a nonprofit. It was then discovered by the agent that a lot of money was not getting deposited and instead was being embezzled by the gambling manager. So they did a great job, and ultimately the special agents ended up arresting the suspect, and they were charged with 4 counts of felony theft. This next slide, we show our cases involving counterfeit, fraud, and forgery incidents. We had a total of 19 cases. 13 of those involved fraudulent checks, small denomination counterfeit bills, and other embezzlements. 6 of those cases were actually $100 counterfeit bills. And again, to the right there, we wanted to highlight one of the cases that was worked. This one involved raffle prize money that was embezzled by a gambling manager at a nonprofit organization. So what happened here was, after the raffle had been won, they asked the gambling manager for the prize funds, and as it turned out, the money had been being stored at his house and was no longer there. So ultimately, the gambling manager in this case was found guilty by a jury in Superior Court. Successful case for us.
The next slide that we have here indicates the inquiries, tips, and complaints that we received as an agency last year in 2023. This information is good because it conveys our relationship that we have with the public, because when we receive either an inquiry, a tip, or a complaint, it can come with public information to where someone can give us their contact info so we can follow up with it. Oh, it looks like we have a hand raised.
Senator.
Oh, Senator Conway?
It's on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, I believe, Senator.
There we are. On illegal online gambling, how many cases of that do we have?
I would have to go back and look. I do not know that number off the top of my head. But we have seen increases over the last few years with that as it's become more prevalent over the years.
And raffles or in what kind of activity? Gambling.
So a lot of the tips that we get, they're usually from anonymous people, so we're not able to follow up with them specifically. But a lot of it is on individual websites or on Facebook, actually. Facebook is kind of a hotbed with people that are running their own raffles or their own online gambling connections that they'll try to entice people to come into. So it's mainly kind of fishing for people on social media websites.
It's mostly the social media. It has nothing to do with our bar on internet gaming holds, so because there's so much advertising for internet access on sports, as you know. Some of the big FanDuel or whatever it's called constantly propose you place game bets with them against our ban on internet gaming. And so I'm just curious about that anyway. So thank you.
No, yes, sir. Yeah, that's exactly correct. So when we get a lot of those tips, we'll inform people that it is a Class C felony to participate in online gambling right now, whether that changes or not in the future. And then we tell them about the position that the Gambling Commission has taken previously on that. So, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Conway, we're happy to get those numbers for you and send them to you separately.
I would be interested. You know, we're living in an internet age.
Absolutely. We will get that information
in
for
an
you.
internet age. I mean, the potential for problems there is huge. Thank you.
Yes.
Cool. Perfect. Yeah, so and just to conclude on this slide, so here it just shows that the regulation unit was the unit that had the most amount of these tips, complaints, or inquiries. Next was tribal gaming, and then working all the way down to the legal office had the least amount with 1% at 11 last year.
All right, so we just wanted to highlight here the number of hours our agents spend out there doing training to licensees and the public. So in 2023, they provided over 300 hours of training. You can see a couple of examples here on the top. You have an agent there providing formal training to a chamber of commerce, and below you have an agent providing some formal training to a house bank card room. It's very important work, and it's something that we do track pretty closely.
So next, we're going to talk about us as the intelligence unit and what we've been able to produce and how we've been able to have an impact. So with this first slide, this represents the intelligence support that we were able to conduct between 2022 and 2023 as a unit. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the intelligence requests and those numbers. And that's basically just the interagency requests that we helped out with as an intelligence unit. That can range from anything to background checks on suspects or more information on websites or locations that agents are looking into. And while we had a slight dip between 22 and 23, the numbers are still relatively the same between both years. And in the middle, you'll see bulletins that we distributed as a unit, both last year and in 2022. And we had a decent increase for us as a unit. And typically what that looks like is bulletins that will send not only interagency, but also to other law enforcement agencies throughout the state or even the country. And those can typically look like attempt to identify bulletins, attempt to locate bulletins, general awareness, and officer safety is pretty huge. We try to keep all the agents within the Gambling Commission, and if it's applicable to the rest of the state, everybody else, as privy as they can be to officer safety issues that we come up with, that we either come across or hear about. And then lastly, on the right-hand side are the assist to law enforcement agencies. So it's kind of the opposite of the intel request, and this is strictly assist that we can send out to other agencies that we work alongside with, either in our cases or if they're working their own independent cases that might have some sort of nexus to a gambling establishment or someone that we might have information on that we can help out with.
So here we wanted to give you an example of what Brennan just talked about. In the second quarter of 2023, we had sent out a bulletin. It's what we call an attempt to identify bulletin, and we did it on behalf of one of our police department partners. And typically, these are photos of people who we are hoping one of our partners can recognize. So in this case, we actually ended up getting a positive response back in the fourth quarter from a surveillance shift manager at one of our tribal casino partners. And it was really great because they not only identified the individual, but they also were able to provide a recent photo of the suspect vehicle. So that information was very, very valuable to that police department's investigation. So very successful, and we're very proud of that type of work.
So one of the overarching themes that we can gain from doing an analysis like this that really helps our leadership out is seeing the trends year to year and random increases that may or may not be expected that we tend to see as the intelligence unit. So the big trend that we saw last year in 2023 was a rise in violent crimes, and more specifically a rise in robberies and follow home robberies. And so these aren't videos we're going to play for you. These are just snips of news stories that anyone can look up if they want to, of individuals that were either followed home from a casino and where there was an attempted robbery at their house, or violent crimes that happened to people on gambling establishments as well. And then this map that we made just kind of highlights the geographic locations of a lot of those violent crimes that we saw last year. Kind of the same trends that we saw with the heat map in the previous slides, that the I-5 corridor is the hotbed, and more specifically King County and the South Seattle area is where a lot of these crimes occurred. And then just to wrap everything up, again, 2023 was the year, there was a year of a rise in violent crimes, and more specifically robberies and follow home robberies. And King County and the I-5 corridor was the epicenter for those violent crimes and overall cases that we saw as the Gambling Commission last year. And then finally, something that we just want to make sure we hit on as an intelligence unit and just as the Gambling Commission in general is we would want to make sure we do our best to become the information sharing hub between our partners, our stakeholders, and just the public in general, because that's what's going to help us to push our motto of keeping the public safe and taking the criminal element out of gambling. Is if we can help gather that information, do everything that we can with it, and then help disperse it as soon as we can, then hopefully we can help see a decrease in a lot of these violent crimes that we saw last year.
And with that, we will take any questions.
Thank you very much for that and for your work. It's good work. A lot of stuff going on out there.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? No questions?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that concludes our agenda for the day. Client in general.
Public comment?
Oh, do we have any final public comments on anything discussed? All right. We will conclude at 1:11 p.m. The next Gambling Commission meeting will be held here at the Liquor and Cannabis Board on August 8th and 9th in 2024, and we are adjourned.
And Chair, just perhaps since we were scheduled to go into tomorrow, just clarifying that the need to continue this meeting into tomorrow was no longer necessary.
Yes, we will no longer be having a meeting tomorrow. Concludes all of our agenda. Thank you.